In this video, we revealed the chilling story of an American retiree who spent his entire life dreaming of living aboard a sailboat. But on his very first crossing, a fatal mistake changed everything. What went wrong? How could something so seemingly small lead to such devastating consequences? This isn't just a cautionary tale, it's a wake-up call for every sailor, cruiser, and ocean dreamer out there. We'll take you step by step through what happened, the warning signs that were missed, and the crucial lessons that could save your boat and your life. From overlooked equipment failures to safety systems that failed at the worst possible moment. This story exposes how one wrong decision can turn a lifelong dream into a tragedy. You'll also learn practical steps that could prevent disaster, drawn from real experience and hard-won knowledge. So before you set sail on your next voyage, stay with us. What happened to this retiree could happen to anyone, unless you're prepared. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to never miss another essential story about seamanship, survival, and the harsh realities of life at sea. Let's dive in. John and Mary Smith were like so many of you watching. Ordinary people with an extraordinary dream. Living in Annapolis, Maryland, they'd spent years sailing the Chesapeake Bay, honing their skills on weekend trips and coastal cruises. John, 65, was a retired mechanical engineer with a knack for fixing anything, from diesel engines to rigging. Mary, 63, a retired schoolteacher, had a passion for navigation. Her charts and dividers always close at hand. Together, they were a perfect team. Their complementary skills, built over 2 decades on their Catalina 42, a sturdy blue water cruiser named Seabreeze, gave them confidence. The boat, built in 1989, wasn't a luxury yacht but a reliable workhorse designed for long passages. With a fin keel, a 6-foot draft, and a displacement of 18,000 pounds. Its 797 square feet of sail area and a 44-horsepower Yanmar diesel made it ideal for the journey they planned. A transatlantic crossing from Newport, Rhode Island, to Horta in the Azores. A 2,200 nautical mile passage. The dream took shape in 2022 when John and Mary decided to sell their home, retire fully, and commit to the adventure of a lifetime. They spent 2 years preparing Seabreeze, pouring their savings into upgrades to make it ocean-ready. They installed new sails from Ullman Sails, a mainsail with 3 reefs, lazy jacks, and a 135% Genoa with UV protection, plus a storm jib and tri-sail for heavy weather. The navigation system was upgraded with a B&G Zeus 3 chart plotter, Triton 2 instruments, a Furuno radar, and a Class B ICE transponder for collision avoidance. A VHF radio with DSC and an ICOM SSB radio ensured long-range communication. For safety, they equipped the boat with a 6-person Winslow lifer aft, an ACR Global Fix, V4, EPIRB, McMurdo, personalized beacons, and spin-lock deck vest harnesses with 1-inch jack lines running along the deck. Power came from 400 watts of solar panels, a Rutland 1200 wind generator, and a 600 AAGM battery bank. Managed by a Victron Multiplus inverter charger, they cleaned and tested a 100-gallon water tank and a 50-gallon fuel tank, enough for 30 days at sea. A water maker producing 8 gallons per hour was added for freshwater self-sufficiency. Every through-hole was inspected, every valve lubricated, and the standing rigging 1x19 stainless steel wire was replaced for strength. Their route was a classic transatlantic passage. Starting from Newport in June 2024, they'd sail east, catching the prevailing westerlies, aiming for Horta, a well-known stopover for cruisers. The 2,200-mile journey was a serious undertaking, with the North Atlantic's unpredictable weather, strong currents like the Gulf Stream, and the risk of summer storms demanding respect. John and Mary prepared meticulously, studying weather patterns, reading logs from other transatlantic sailors, and joining online forums to glean tips from seasoned cruisers. They practiced man-overboard drills, tested their storm sails, and memorized emergency procedures. Their confidence was high, their boat was ready, and their dream was within reach. The departure from Newport was a moment of triumph. Friends waved from the dock as Seabreeze slipped her lines, her white hull gleaming under the summer sun. The first leg, down the Rhode Island coast, was smooth, with 12-knot winds pushing them at 6 knots. They anchored in Block Island to double-check systems fuel, water, batteries before heading into the open Atlantic. The first few days were idyllic. They settled into a rhythm of 4-hour watches, John taking the helm at dawn, Mary at dusk. They cooked simple meals on a gimbaled propane stove, caught fish with a handline, and marveled at dolphins trailing the boat. The B&G chart plotter kept them on a great circle route, averaging 120 miles a day at 5 knots. The solar panels and wind generator kept the batteries topped off, and the water maker hummed along, producing fresh water without issue. They felt invincible, their years of preparation paying off. A week out, they hit their first real test, A low-pressure system, bringing 30-knot winds and 10-foot seas, John reefed the mainsail to the second point, reducing sail area by 30%, while Mary steered, keeping sea breeze on a broad reach to ride the waves. The B&G autopilot struggled with the load, so they hand-steered for hours. Clipped into their harnesses, it was grueling, but they emerged unscathed, their confidence soaring. In the calm that followed, they celebrated with a glass of wine, toasting their ability to handle the Atlantic's temper. They patched a small tear in the Genoa with sail tape, a temporary fix they planned to address properly in Horta. The SSB radio brought daily weather updates via grid files, showing a stable hypersure system ahead. Everything seemed under control. In Horta, they planned to restock, repair the Genoa, and prepare for the next leg to mainland Europe. But the Atlantic had other plans. 2 weeks into the passage Colombo, on day 14, a sudden squall hit, a common North Atlantic phenomenon fueled by warm Gulf Stream waters. Winds jumped from 15 to 40 knots in an hour, with 15-foot waves battering sea breeze. John and Mary scrambled to reduce sail, dropping the mainsail to the third reef and hoisting the storm jib. They wore their harnesses, clipped to jacklines, as they worked the deck. The boat was holding up, but the conditions were brutal. Here's where the fatal mistake came to light. The dinghy, a 10-foot rigid inflatable boat rib with a 15-horsepower outboard, was secured on the foredeck with 4 ratchet straps. In their haste to leave Newport, John had only checked 2 of the straps, assuming the others were fine. He hadn't noticed the UV damage on the strap's webbing. Weakened by years of exposure, the dinghy's weight, combined with the outboard, put extra strain on the straps. As a massive wave crashed over the bow, the weakened straps snapped. The dinghy broke free, sliding across the deck like a 300-pound missile. Mary was near the mast, adjusting the storm jib, when the dinghy slammed into her, snapping her jackline and throwing her overboard. John reacted instantly, hitting the man overboard button on the GPS to mark the position. He threw a life ring tethered to the boat, but the raging sea swallowed it. He circled back, fighting 40-knot winds and towering waves, but visibility was near zero. The spotlight showed only white caps. Mary's personalized beacon was transmitting, but the signal was intermittent in the heavy seas. For hours, John searched, shouting her name into the wind, his voice drowned by the storm. Exhausted and low on fuel, he activated the EPIRB, its 406 MHz signal beaming their position to rescue services. He broadcasted a mayday on VHF channel 16 and the SSB, but no ships were nearby. Alone, he deployed a sea anchor, a parachute-like device to stabilize the boat, and waited. Battered by the storm. Rescue came 20 hours later. A French cargo ship, responding to the EPIRB, they found John hypothermic and in shock, but no sign of Mary. The Azores Coast Guard launched a search, but after 96 hours, it was called off. Mary was presumed lost at sea, a tragedy that shook the cruising community. John sailed Seabreeze to Horta with help from a fellow cruiser, his dream shattered. In the weeks that followed, he sold the boat, unable to continue without Mary, and returned to the U.S., haunted by guilt. The mistake was simple but deadly. The dinghy straps, a $20 piece of equipment, could have been replaced in minutes. Stronger straps, like 2-inch polyester with a 5,000-pound braking strength, would have held. John's failure to secure the outboard motor added unnecessary weight, exacerbating the problem. Warning signs were there. Sailor in Newport had mentioned checking deck lashings, but John, eager to depart, brushed it off. The weather forecast, downloaded via SSB, showed a stable high, but the Atlantic squalls can form rapidly, a fact they'd underestimated. Fatigue from 2 weeks at sea dulled their vigilance, a common issue on long passages. John staggered onto the dock in Horta, his hands trembling as he tied off Seabreeze's lines. The marina was alive with the clink of halyards and the chatter of cruisers, but to him, it was a blur of noise. Paul, the Canadian sailor who'd sailed with him the last 200 miles, clapped a hand on his shoulder, saying nothing. Words couldn't touch the void where Mary should have been. The Azores sun beat down, glinting off the white hull of Seabreeze, but John couldn't look at it. The boat, their home for years, was now a ghost ship, its foredeck scarred where the dinghy had torn free. He sat on a bench, staring at the water, replaying the squall, the snap of the straps, the sickening thud as the dinghy hit Mary, her body vanishing into the black waves. He'd lost her, and the weight of it crushed him. The cruising community in Horta wrapped around him like a lifeline. A French couple brought him coffee and bread, their quiet presence a balm. A British sailor named Clara, who'd heard his mayday on her SSB, offered to help with the Coast Guard's questions. They needed details: the time of the incident, the weather, the equipment failure. John recounted it all, his voice hollow. The dinghy's ratchet straps, weakened by years of sun, had given way in 40-knot winds and 15-foot seas. Mary, clipped to a jackline, was struck and swept overboard. He'd searched until his strength failed, until the EPIRB's signal brought a ship too late to find her. The Coast Guard's officer nodded, scribbling notes, and said the search had ended after 96 hours. Mary was gone, lost to the Atlantic. John stayed in a rented room above a bar, unable to sleep on sea breeze. Nights were the worst, when he'd wake to the sound of waves, thinking he heard her voice. By day, he wandered the marina, avoiding the boat. He'd see other cruisers working on their decks, checking lines, scrubbing hulls, and feel a stab of guilt. He'd been one of them, confident, capable, but he'd skipped checking all 4 straps on the dinghy, hadn't noticed the faded, brittle webbing. He'd left the 15-horsepower outboard attached, adding weight that turned the dinghy into a weapon. A sailor in Newport had mentioned deck lashings, a passing comment John had ignored, too eager to cast off. The SSB weather files showed clear skies, but he hadn't questioned their 24-hour lag, hadn't braced for a squall. These were small mistakes, the kind any sailor might make. But the ocean didn't care. Clara invited him to a cruiser's potluck at the Marina's Cafe, a weathered spot with checkered tablecloths and a view of the harbor. John didn't want to go, but Paul insisted, saying he needed people, not solitude. The room was packed with sailors' sunburned faces, calloused hands, stories in every laugh line. They passed plates of fish, stew, and rice, trading tales of storms and near misses. A German couple shared how a loose jerry can had jammed their helm in a gale, nearly running them aground. An Australian solo sailor admitted to skipping a rigging check only to lose a shroud mid-ocean. John listened, his food untouched, realizing the sea spared no one. When Clara nudged him to speak, he stood, his throat tight. "Mary's gone because I didn't check a strap," he said. "Don't skip the small stuff. It's what kills you." The room went quiet, heads nodding. They'd all been there, one mistake away from disaster. The lessons burned into John's mind, ones he wished he'd learned sooner. The dinghy, a 10-foot rib weighing 300 pounds with the outboard, needed more than 4 ratchet straps. He should have used 6 or 8 2-inch polyester ones with 5,000-pound strength. Checked for UV damage and fitted with chafe guards. The outboard should have been stowed below. Lightening the load, a chain or cable backup could have held it. In 15-foot waves, he'd been rushed in Newport, caught up in the thrill of departure, a weather window closing. But haste was no excuse. Every sailor faces that pressure, and the good ones stop, check, double check. Weather was another failure. The squall came fast, born where warm Gulf Stream waters met cooler air. The SSB's grid files, downloaded a day earlier, showed a high system, but squalls don't wait for updates. A satellite phone could have given real-time data, showing the low pressure system forming 12 hours before. A service like PredictOne might have suggested reefing early or dodging the storm's path. John and Mary had trusted their SSB, a fine tool, but its lag left them blind to the Atlantic's summer tricks. Forecasts are guesses, not guarantees, and sailors must always expect worse than predicted. Safety gear was their last chance, and it wasn't enough. Mary's spin-lock deck vest harness was clipped to a 1-inch jackline, but the dinghy's impact tore the stitching. A Dyneema jackline, with 10,000-pound strength, might have held a double tether short, and long could have kept her secure. If one failed, her eyes beacon signaled, but heavy seas drowned it out. A stronger model might have cut through the chaos. John's man overboard drill hitting the GPS button, throwing a life ring was textbook, but 40-knot winds and 15-foot waves made rescue impossible. A pre-planned recovery system, like a life sling tethered to the boat, could have given her a chance. John sold Seabreeze to a Portuguese couple, watching as they sailed away, the boat's hull fading into the horizon. He couldn't sail without Mary, couldn't face the cockpit where she'd laughed, plotting their course. He flew back to Annapolis, settling into a small apartment, the sea of memory he both loved and hated. The cruising community stayed in touch, sending emails, sharing his story on forums. A post on a sailing board went viral, titled, "Check Your Straps, a lesson paid in blood." Sailors responded with their own stories, a loose hatch cover smashing a helm, a poorly stowed anchor breaking a trail. The message was clear: the sea demands perfection, and you pay for anything less. John started teaching navigation at a local sailing school, a way to honor Mary. She'd loved teaching. Her charts spread across Seabreeze's saloon, her sextant catching the light. He'd tell students about her, about the squall, about the straps. Don't trust your gear. He'd say, test it, every time. He'd walk them through practical steps. Inspect deck gear with a magnifying glass for cracks or wear. Use multiple tie-down straps, chains, cables, and check them daily. Stow heavy items, get real-time weather via satellite, not just SSB. Practice man overboard drills until they're muscle memory. Wear harnesses always, with double tethers and eyes beacons. Invest in a sea, anchor, or drogue for storm stability. These weren't just tips. They were Mary's legacy, a way to save others from his pain. The tragedy wasn't unique. A 2020 incident saw a cruiser lose his wife when a loose spinnaker pole crushed her in a jibe. In 2022, a couple survived a rogue wave only because their deck was clear. Nothing to break free. Forums were full of close calls, napped lines, unsecured gear, skipped checks. John read them, each one a reminder of his own failure, but also a call to keep sharing. He spoke at a yacht club in Annapolis, his voice steadier now, urging sailors to prepare, to respect the sea's indifference. It doesn't care about your dreams, he said. It punishes mistakes, big or small. Life went on, but John carried Mary with him. Her photo sat on his desk, her smile bright against a Chesapeake sunset. He'd touch it before teaching, a silent promise to keep her story alive. The ocean had taken her, but it couldn't take her lessons. For every sailor planning a passage, John's advice was simple. Check your gear, every strap, every line. Monitor whether like your life depends on it, because it does. Wear your harness, clip in, always. The sea is beautiful, but it's merciless. Mary's dream ended in tragedy, but yours doesn't have to. Before you cast off, ask yourself, is your deck secure? Are your systems ready? Are you clipped in? John and Mary's story could be yours, unless you're prepared. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay with us for more stories of sailing, survival, and the truth of life at sea. Fair winds, and stay safe out there.